Hi there, Ron here of Variable Play, and welcome to LarongAtin. Hi everyone.
Morning.
Good morning and
Hello.
good evening.
Good evening.
Morning.
So we have here Kenneth Tee, who designed People Power, the Insurgency in the Philippines, 1981 to 1986. Good evening, good evening. How are you? How are you, Ken?
Oh, I'm fine.
It's
Thank you very much. Good morning. Nice to see you again.
so yeah, we have some viewers already on stream, and then I've already shared a lot of our every group that I can think of. Let me just turn on our background music. Okay. So before I start, let me I'm gonna this is already available in neutral grounds. And for those who are interested in the game, I would recommend definitely for you guys to get it soon. Why? Because um, there's a sale at the moment for in neutral grounds, and you can see somebody also had the brilliant idea for Valentine's, and there you go. We all are getting this brand new game with a nice additional bonus in there. So definitely, I recommend for people to try it uh, as soon as possible, and at the same time, go and get the game. So it's quite good. And Bob and I just played People Power 2 days ago in our Carmona game night. So we have to share with you, Ken. We are a group of volunteers running different tabletop game nights across the metro. Uh, of course, related to LarongAtin, we're also game designers, or at least related in game reviewers and whatnot. And, Freddie is the publisher in LarongAtin. Bob helps out in writing articles as well as helping run game nights. Sai is also another designer. So to start, Ken, uh, can you tell us a bit more of how you got started into game design and what inspired you to create People Power Insurgency in the Philippines, 1983 to 1986?
Sure, Ron. I guess I should start by saying that when it comes to being a gamer, period, war gamer, that is, which I see Coin as being part of, even though it's mostly a crossover. Um, it's like with anybody with an imagination, like when you see a product or something, you kind of wish you had that same idea or something more attuned to your own vision, and that's what happened with People Power. I played Andean Abyss back when it came
Mm.
out, and I believe that was 2012,
Uh,
11. Anyway, so I read Killing Pablo, and so I knew the background of that conflict, or the
mhm,
resolution of that conflict, and that Volkaronki made it a four-player game, using FARC, using the government, using the directorio, and of course the cartels, which Pablo Escobar was part of. I thought, wow, what an amazing design! And of course,
mhm,
I went to the Arizona Monster Expo Consumer, and another guy was there named Jeff Grossman, and he told me about the volume two, which is Cuba Libre, which I
mhm,
thought was an excellent mini port of Andean Abyss, which is smaller, same amount of people, almost the same kind of factions when you thought about it.
mhm,
But at the same time, Volko was showing me that they were play testing the Afghanistan one, Distant Plain. So when I saw A Distant Plane, and then of course the other two volumes, I said like, wow, you know what? That could work for a Filipino game, especially during
mhm,
the Marcos, era, meaning 1965, which happened. He became president a year before I was born. I'm 58. no shame. And then, of course, I had already been, my family emigrated in 85, which is a year before.
Before
You know,
yes.
so it's like, for me, it's like it made sense,
Mm.
and the title, it was going to have like the other factions. It has the government, has a communist insurgency, has the Muslim insurgency, which like I got from what could be done like in the Taliban and
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, like, you know what, the perfect fourth, because I wasn't really satisfied with the way they had the right wing movements that I've never heard of. Even like when I was reading Killing Pablo, Directoria was like probably three or four mentions. It didn't really. When it came to like the FARC and the government and the cartels, it wasn't really almost a nomer. I mean, not nomer, mean no namer. Um, but the Philippines, I thought, like, you know what, with the opposition, and that's what they were called, right? Opposition
Yep.
parties,
Yes.
Laban,
Yes.
Yep.
PDP, Laban, and
Mm.
um, uh, sorry, it's been a while since I've done the research. Anyway, Salvador Laureles Unido. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, that would be the perfect fourth, sort of the fourth
Mm.
faction, a peaceful faction. And not that I'm tooting my own horn that it was my first idea, but then later Gandhi came with the peaceful, and I have to give India it's just desserts. It did, like, start the nonviolent movement worldwide in
Mm-hmm.
terms of our public consciousness of it. So with that, I mean, I went through numerous play tests, yeah, and there was one during the GMT weekend where we had four designers of coin games. Myself, Harold Buchanan, where Liberty or Death was just released. Mark, then Mark, but now Morgan Reddy, who was doing Pendragon at that time, designing it. And of course, Volker Ronke himself. And we are talking about like how they like the game, how they don't like the game. And Volko struck a chord with me when he said that it's tough to be the Moros because, and at that time, I guess he still had some say in like after Fire in the Lake, it just like the designs that came after it were so immense.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just went in like they were not Andean Abyss clones anymore. They became
Mm-hmm.
like something better and greater than the initial vision. So Volko said that the MNLF or the Moros were stuck in one area and had
Yes.
no influence toward the whole map. And funny enough, I think there are some games that actually do that now. I forgot which ones, but that made me like, hey, if the guy who designed the system himself has a problem with one, you
Mm-hmm.
know, things. And I just said, like, and the NPA and Moro never fought each other. If
Yes.
anything, there was sort of like a silent alliance or anything. So, if so, that also became a problem. So with that, I just said, you know what, I just have to, that was 10 years ago. And so I just said, you know what, I got to like, I'm sorry, 5 years ago. So that was 5 years ago. I guess got to do a redesign of this. I'll keep
Mm-hmm.
what I know because it's like, for me, the best parts were the end anyway, rather than the middle or the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so just to tell you, like the original name for the game was called the Iron Butterfly, and
Oh.
I got a lot of flack from that too because everybody was thinking about that stupid music group, La Vida de Gata or something like that, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, definitely gonna have to change the title just because of the people have the wrong kind of connections, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to think people think like the first thing they think about the game is the song or the band. So anyway, so I scaled it back and I said, like, you know what, instead of making it about the whole Marcos presidency, I'll just make it about the end, which is, like I said, the most interesting part because
Mm-hmm.
um, how can I say the background to it all. I was there already. I was very aware of what was going on, even though I kind of had like probably a more neophyte kind of version of events that were going on. It's like all of a sudden my high school buddies were chanting, Ni Noi, Ni Noi, Ni Noi, and I'm like, who is that guy? Never heard of him before. I mean, that's how closeted I was in terms of knowing what was going on. And
Mm-hmm.
fast forward, here I am living, here in the States, and actually reading more about what happened behind the scenes and the whole presidency itself, and how it was part of the Cold War, which is, I'll tell you right now, my favorite wargaming period. So that kind of made sense for me to, like, okay, then let me try doing this. So
Mm-hmm.
I've already promised Gene, because I was like one of his first customers, like, I'm going to make a game with your company. That's kind of like my dream right now. And every time I came up with an idea, it always fell short, or the tools and the personnel just weren't there yet. It's like
Mm-hmm.
he didn't design his team approach concept yet. It was still like, you have to submit your artwork to Roger, you have to do this and or other things, and it just didn't gel well. It wasn't until, like I said, people power. They're like, I got hand off to Volko, then to Harold, and finally, when
Mm-hmm.
it came to Jason, who's like probably
The
the most,
developer.
yeah, developer. He
Yes.
really like took me on, and he's like younger than me. He's like younger than you too, Ron. And he
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
took me on his thing, and like, he knew his stuff. He put me with the right people like Ken Kuhn and Joe Dewhurst, and it just gelled at that point. And everything, even like I envisioned, there were some certain things of the game I want to add, like I had the silly idea that, okay, not to digress, but one of the cards I really wanted to keep was called the Apocalypse Now card, only because the movie was filmed in the Philippines, and that there was one story. If you ever saw the documentary on the movie, the Marcos government actually took back the helicopters they lent for that scene with the Cry of the Valkyries to attack the
Okay.
NPA. And I thought, like, that would be so awesome if I could get that card in that game. But the time period, it was 79 and the game starts in 81, and it would have been nice, but it was just cute. It didn't function
Mm-hmm.
well as,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what does this do for the government? What does this do for the NPA? What does this do for the reformers? And it's like, okay, yeah, we have to take it out. I understand. And
Yeah.
anyway,
And
so in your hands is the present product, as the way probably 98% of what I envisioned, and everything else was a great improvement over what I had in mind. So
yeah.
with
Yeah.
that,
And it's
yeah,
not
hope you guys.
an easy thing to, because coin games, insurgency uh, style games always tend to be four. I think there's only another one that's three factions. It's always
Yes.
been four factions, right? And so the balance of power now needs to be redistributed, and the dynamics also change. But I think it really worked well from the thematic sense of how uh, the NPAs sort of were really spread out. So I've played the game twice now, and I've always ended up to be the NPA player, which is fun in the sense of, like, we have no money, but we can really mess up a lot of the provinces, and so I quite enjoy that. I always pity the the government player to a certain reason, because, like, we're always ganging up on him, but that's really how it works. And then they get the election and have a lot of money. What I really appreciated about the design is this single card that dictates how everybody will play for the round.
Yes.
It dictates the event for the round. So I think you guys had like a term for it, a single mini
Correct.
hand.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
so that was pretty interesting, because I don't see that often. It's like a compressed version of a hand. Twilight Struggle would have a hand of cards. Most of these would have a hand of cards and people are playing. But here it really simplifies it. So for a somebody who's coming in from uh, a not so wargaming oriented background, it's such an was that something that you really envisioned as part of, just to make it a bit more of a welcoming game into the coin series?
I have to be asked for more clarification. Are you talking about like when the event card is played? It's not like in other coin games you can see what's coming ahead of time. but also the mini hand where you have the personalities and the acts of desperation. So
So yeah, so I'm pertaining to at the moment. I'm pertaining to just the event cards.
the event cards. Actually, no, that was Jason. I have to be
Oh,
honest. I
nice.
wanted the surprise because there were some really good event cards that I put into the game,
Mhm.
and that became the downfall of the way it is, or what it was in the original series, or where you could see it ahead of time, because they were too powerful. Jason said
Mm,
the only way to sort of balance that out was to have it hidden, or
mm,
as we saw, like the single reveal rather than the
mhm,
double. So
mhm.
in that sense, I could see, like, yeah, that's true, because now you don't know what's coming out there. Just like history, right? You don't know if the elections come out, or the NPA is going to raid or anything like that. It kind of made more sense. So somebody who wants to, like, hopefully get a good card will have to do a limited activate operation, so that they can be still active for the next turn. So that was kind of like the sacrifice, because I
Mhm.
made limited operations, in that response, because it's a three-player game, and I just wanted the
Yeah.
game keep on going. It's like, yeah, you
Mm,
have to make these choices, whether you want to pass, but you'll at least get money. You want to do a limited op, you'll use your money, but at least you'll stay active for the next card, and that became the dynamic. And I was
mhm.
really happy because I
Yeah.
tried. Once I got the game, I tried playing it the way it was supposed to. Yeah, it didn't work. It's like one side would obviously know what was going on, do a limited op to help them get that card, and then it would it unbalanced the game very too much.
Mm. Okay. I'm glad that that was the collaboration that you were able to do. Bobby wanted to ask something a while ago.
Uh, yeah, well, just a clarification for those who are not really that familiar with coin. Just to reiterate certain things that Ken already mentioned. Uh, the original designer was Volko Runke. So Volko is a CIA analyst by profession. So I'm not sure if he has retired already, but that's what he used to do. And the original design of Coin was a four-player game with, of course, it's asymmetric, one powerful government faction and three other insurgent factions, and all of them were what I'd call violent factions. So they outright engage in acts of violence. Now, one of the big differences in People Power is that it's a three-player coin, and one of the factions is non-violent.
Yeah.
So uh, um, it is the second in the series, and that's what Ken was talking about. That Gandhi was the first in the series that actually introduced a non-violent faction, right?
Mm,
Ken, that's correct,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, you're right with
Yes.
the.
Mm.
It's
And
been a while since I played the game, so
mm,
you can fill
yeah,
in the blank there to what the factions were called. I
yeah.
know they had the Muslim faction too. So.
hmm And I don't know if the series, the coin series has been going on, and People Power is actually the 11th of the series.
Correct.
Um, I don't know if this is the first time it has happened in coin, but usually in the classic coin, you see this is also what Ken was kind of mentioning a while ago. You see the next playable card
Right.
in
mm,
in People Power. You can't see that card, and in four-player coin, um, one of the more powerful events would be the limited operations, which made you ineligible. In
Right.
his version of coin, uh, the limited operations uh, became um, an action which made you still eligible to play uh, on the next turn. So those are some of the key differences, I think, from classical coin, right?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Mhm.
I think for a four-player game, because sometimes you don't have the chance, and also it's cost-saving faction. It's like the less operations you do, the. But again, I think in terms of their diagram of like how they want to activate for their faction, a limited op would mean would make the next player op only, I believe. So it kind of kills the event
Mhm.
for any player. So that was
Mhm.
one like I guess system dynamic that Volco used that I did because for a three-player game, I thought something like that would be kind of limiting. You know.
Yeah, and I I really appreciated the that matrix, where so the event card dictates how the turn order will work. It already
Yeah.
indicates how the strong player, in essence, for the round is influencing the next player, and then that's the difficulty because do I want to push my agenda or block the next player because I can see that they can really maximize it, and it reduces the amount of complexity, which makes it really a very approachable game, and I really appreciated it with that one. So now, in terms of, have you seen this game explored in an educational component? Because every time Bob and I would play, we're always just going back through the history. Yeah, yeah, this one, I remember this situation before. This is really what they did. And we would always connect there. Have you explored how people actually use this in an educational setting?
Well, yeah, I figured that was something like I you know in all honesty, one of the reasons too I wanted to design the game was that being like I said, growing up in the Cold War, most revolutions that occur when it's a U.S. allied dictatorship and a communist insurgency, for instance, Cuba, Nicaragua, they end badly. They
Mm.
end in civil war and violent revolution, a lot of death, and and so forth. And at that time, of course, '86, I was already here, but I had friends, I had relatives, who were still there, and of course, that was my fear that I may not
Mm.
see them again. You
Mm.
know, and it didn't happen that way. So in a way, I'm really grateful. Thank the Lord that He interceded. That people power was peaceful. There were
Mm.
still deaths, but not in the hundreds, and thankfully not the thousands. So if anything, I want to educate people on that. Was that like, hey, you know what, you know, India, sure, but the Philippines definitely to show like, hey, you know what, nobody died. Somebody left to take a very long vacation in Hawaii, and that
Mm.
was it. You know, of course, their
Yeah.
son would return to finish the job. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and even the situations that we end up with in the game, where, for example, Manila would now be flooded with yellow cubes, and we're all going like, "Yes, that's EDSA already. That's EDSA revolution right there. Look at that. That's EDSA
Mhm.
revolution." And you see the frustration of the government player mobilizing all of their troops. They have to like, am I gonna leave Mindanao? Because I'm just waiting for them. Like, okay, please leave so I can push my agenda there. Go
Yeah, exactly.
go. So it's so much fun. It's so much fun to see the dynamic, and it's a very interesting because normally kingmaker situation, where if you're three players, one player is immediately the kingmaker, but the power
Mhm.
dynamic, the strengths of how you balance. How did you go through the balancing of this? Because it's such a
Yeah.
complex machine to have fiddled around all of the power levels.
I'm also
Well,
curious how you balances the three factions.
oh, thank you. I mean, well, I'll be honest. Um, I already like during the time it was already sent and All Bridges Burning came out, and I saw that was a three-player faction, and I actually played it. I played, and I'm like going like, you know what? I like it, but I don't like it. There's something that's kind of like inbound, almost like the blue player just sits around and then strikes whoever, if the red or the white is ahead and stuff like that. And I'm saying like to myself, like, well, it works for Finland, but it doesn't work for the Philippines.
Mm.
You know, I mean, Finland and the Finnish game or Albridge is Burning had to worry about the Germans and the Russians. And in the Philippines at that time, there wasn't an outright influence of anything like maybe America, but even, you know, America and the Soviet Union and China were all more like a let's see and wait. Only like till the very end was, and this is of course a rumor that Marcus was told to leave. He didn't leave on his own accord, you know. So, you know, I'll just go with that. I won't say it's any part of anything I designed or anything, but it is definitely in the cards. That's why the acts of desperation were built, designed for that. Because
Mhm.
um, in a way, I was sick and tired of sometimes of the way some games I played, like Coin, where like I could be like leading, and then I'm so far behind, and then the game ends. And I didn't kind of like that sort of like I wanted to give somebody a fighting chance.
Mm.
That's how I came up with acts of desperation. And then the balancing factors to like, you know, the thing is I get a lot of not a big number, but a small number who complain about the the disparity when it comes to like, you know, like they keep saying the government will always win, the government will always win. I'm going like, sure, the government will always win if it's played by somebody competent, and the other players are not as competent as the government player because he'll use that. So, you know, I haven't, you know, but then again, I'm like, hey, you know what, you guys play with whomever and however you want to play.
Mm.
It's none of my business if you guys don't want to play like, you know, following history. You know, it's
Mhm.
like I tend to think of them, talk to these people like, well, in World War II, you know, did the Allies always start from a strong position? You know, if they were in a strong position, why did they attack North Africa first? Right? Why did they not just go for the jugular and attack France at the get go?
Mm.
No, because they had to like whittle down the enemy, right? They had to attack North Africa. They had to attack Italy and Sicily before that. They're whittling down the enemy so they can get to that point where they could like do a D-Day landing. That's the way it
Mm.
is also in people power.
Yeah.
The government is so strong that, you know, like the Russians and the Western Allies, they have to have this little alliance at first, and then once the government is more into like that sort of like state to where it can lose now, that's when you have the NPA and the reformers like now they're going to vie for control or
Yeah.
for
Mm.
victory, and that's
And
what I'm in there, you know. So
uh,
so it's like, yeah, you can't just expect like, yeah, the government will try their very best, like what happened with the Nazi Germany, to put down Soviet Union, to put down the Allies wherever they are. But they also have certain resources that they have to like make sure like, hey, if I do this, then I'm giving up, you know, some of my VPs in terms of the sorry, what is it now? I keep forgetting. Hang on. There we go. Patronage.
yes. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No
But
worries.
anyway, I think you got I hopefully I answered your question.
Yes. Yes. And we really see it. I actually I appreciate um the dynamic that happens all the time, as I mentioned a while ago. Bob, you can maybe share
Yeah.
more about what
Mhm.
happened with our game and some
Yeah.
stuff to add.
Well, I'll just clarify something. So for people who haven't played the game yet or haven't used the Act of Desperation card yet, because we actually haven't used that in our game yet, Ron.
Yes, we have
So
it. I've looked at it.
yeah,
I've been wanting. I want to do the personalities next, and
mm,
then the acts of desperation.
yeah. So the Act of Desperation card is a card you choose pre-game, and it is used during the election phase. And if you fulfill the requirements of the Act of Desperation, you usually get victory points.
Hmm.
All right. So going back to what you were talking about education earlier, um, I was actually in the process of uh, teaching and discussing the game with a couple of teachers, high school teachers. Unfortunately, our schedules did not match, but that's something I want to get done and probably maybe make another article for GMT on that. Yeah, and
Mhm.
then I also wanted to add something about the development of the game. I think Ken was also at a big advantage designing people power because the core coin system was already in place, and it's a very modular system that's easily adaptable to different historical periods and situations.
Yeah,
So
I
yun
think
lang. That's,
I, I see that actually as a designer, we often look at mechanics as frameworks. You can see deck building. Of course, coin itself is sort of this sequence of decisions that you're able to make. But it's always the trick is yes, there's the worker placement exists, deck building exists, but how do you then apply it so that it's really thematically connected to the actual situation or experience you want to have your players experience, and that's always the tricky bit. And when you see people hate or fall in love with colored cubes on the board, that's the only time you know, okay, I was able to build that situation. And definitely we've experienced that many times with people power, where we almost put names on the cubes themselves. So have you what feedback aside from the ones you've gotten from us, like, when since its release, what has the crowd given you in terms of how do they like the game, where's the farthest this game has gone, given feedback to you on, what's the experience so far?
Experience is mostly positive. Like I said, there's a few, of course, the ones who say they'll probably like not play this game, or they'll still look at Cuba Libre as being the intro game to Coin, and they have the right to do that. I'm not gonna say like no, you're wrong or whatever. Yeah, there are a lot of good games out there, and I'm not gonna like say that my game is the best game out there. It's certainly, even in my perception, if that was the case, then I'd be playing People Power all the time. But let this magnificent burst in the hobby, work itself out. But answer to your question, yeah, it's mostly positive. Anybody who says like, oh yeah, this is the designer of People Power, and they're like, oh wow, you designed a really great game. I just played this, blah blah blah. And of course, outside the game, it's like, oh, where's the shoes? And I'm so tired of that. It's like, come on, it's like
Okay.
nobody plays World War II and goes, oh, what about the BMWs? I'm like, right? It's like it's so it's
it,
so kind of insulting, to be honest, if you ask. But you
it
know,
did, there was no actual, maybe political effect, except for it added a nuance. I think.
yeah,
um,
mhm,
so but
exactly. I mean,
it
it's like, sure, you know what? I'll make a card in the expansion, well, just to make you happy, but then that's it. I
speaking
think,
of,
of course, people will just like, because that's what they know from their consciousness.
yeah,
That's
and
what the news, and that's kind of
correct.
like, so I can't blame them for that. But I
Mm,
mean, I want to make a serious design so people could learn about what actually it was out there. And like I said before, it is one of the battlegrounds, even though not a very well known one compared to Vietnam or
mm,
Korea,
mhm,
of the American experience in the Cold War. And
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
just glad that I was able to provide that, because, like I said, it's my favorite time period. So I'm glad I was able to design a game so people can understand communists, and American allied nations, and the dance they went through. That it was just more than pieces on a map, really, on a
Yeah,
global scale.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
To be fair to the game and about the shoes comment, I think the shoes were only found out after the
Right.
revolution
mhm,
when reporters were able to get into Malacanang Palace. So
Hmm.
the shoes issue shouldn't be in the game.
No, it shouldn't exactly. But like I said, that's the only way I guess the fans connect with it. It's kind of like a sporting event. You're not gonna like ask somebody who just shot 58 points in the game, like, so how did it feel? No, you just know he scored 58 points, right? The PBA game of his life. It's like it's like, why is that even necessary to add? But
mhm,
I get it, Freddie. Some people that's their only connection to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
that could be some people just wanting to chat about it, or especially for I guess the younger gamers
Hmm.
who probably weren't alive at that time or were too young.
Hmm.
So these are the things that they distinctly remember from that era, just because it was such an odd uh, bit of data.
Yeah, like for me, when I did my research, and we talked about Apocalypse Now, and being a war gamer, it's like I didn't know there was like a battle group we sent to Vietnam. It's mostly non-combat, but I've seen nowhere like in any history book about Vietnam. Yeah, there was a Filipino unit. It's like the
mm,
South Koreans take, and the Australians, outside the Americans, of course, take most of the like credit because they seen action. But and then of course expanding on the personalities of the game that you saw in the the personality cards.
mm,
I did realize that a lot of the Filipino people in the military, as far as Korea, I mean, Fidel Ramos was in Korea. I did not know that.
mm.
And there was a lot of Filipino history I wish I had known when I was in the Philippines that I had to learn here,
So
which is kind
how
of
did
like, okay, you were talking about the education system of, what's going on there. And it's like, even then, it's like you think like, Filipinos are very proud of their heritage, especially during World War II when, we all fought against the Japanese. And then to have like something in the more famous like battlegrounds of the Cold War, Korea and Vietnam, and not even a mention. That was, I thought, like, wow, you know.
mm,
And what are your thoughts on that?
actually the I think Alejandro was saying that it we're always grateful when designers have gone through that effort of s- taking and synthesizing, in some sense summarizing the key points that have happened in history and letting players experience it in a different form. Of course, this is not to revise history or to change it. You're actually trying to
Mhm.
surface the conversation and surface, hey, this actually happened. Here's all the evidence related to that. Here's all the research. And it's not necessary, of course, randomness in play. The events might not necessarily be in the same order, but that's just game mechanics. When you're zooming in on each of the situations, you've gone through the whole effort of making sure the information there is really what has happened and enough backing information around it. So how did you go about researching? Because it's quite a daunting task to like now discover all of these. How did you build the information for this game?
Well, I had to like sort of like try to be fair to each faction.
Mm,
So I tried to get a resource that was like written or only had that person's perspective of the
mhm,
conflict. That's why there was this book called Inside the NPA. Forgive me, I forgot the author. But I thought it was so like, wow. It's like, because, when living there in the Philippines, I only lived like around Manila, the Manila area, let's say Manila. But honestly, I actually lived in Bulacan, but we commuted to Manila. for a while. So anyway, so it's like it's easy to get that form of mind that nothing happens outside Manila, right? So when I was reading this inside the NPA, I learned about the efforts of the NPA in Mindanao, of course, in Samar, in northern Luzon, because for me at that time, northern Luzon was Baguio vacation time, But outside that, it's like so. I tried to get from the government point of view, which is the Marcoses, and then I got one from the opposition point of view, from especially during the assassination and all that. So that was really interesting. What I couldn't get like a block of was the moral point of view at that time, because at that time I was still doing Iron Butterfly, and so everything I got about the moral I found online. I couldn't like find a resource about it, so I just did my best online. So when Iron Butterfly got compressed to People Power, almost all of those notes got lost in the shuffle because I didn't need them anymore. But it gave me that kind of perspective of like we have three different stories that are intertwined into one, and that's again that also comes from the balancing portion. I wanted the player to experience like what that faction was experiencing, not necessarily every other faction.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. When you're playing and you see an event that is for your faction, you really feel it's for your faction. Everything around it, the sequence of turn order, the event itself, you really feel and relate to the event. So it really correlates on that one. The book that you were mentioning, is it the Inside the Philippine Revolution, New People's Army?
Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
So,
I have the
uh,
book right here. You think I should be able to just look at the resources on
William Chapman, I think.
William Chapman, that's it. Right.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Bob.
Yeah. I'll also give some feedback because I've been able to play the game with supporters of the different factions. So
Yes, I
think,
saw that article. Wonderful article, Bob. I have to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah,
That was
thanks.
far and beyond what I expected. That was great. I mean, it's like I designed my game for people like that, and you, of course.
Mm.
Yeah.
And they were all one. A number of them are just casual board game players, and they were I even call them loose casual, so not really into board games per se, and they were able to handle the game. Of course, with some amount of hand holding. But the very interesting thing about their reaction to the game is that for a political game, it felt extremely neutral.
Mm,
So again, the game is driven by the card. Driven by the card, which is actually an event card,
mm,
and each event in the game will work for both the government and the insurgent side. So,
mm,
thematically speaking, um, the event is interpreted by both from the government's perspective and from the reformer or the NPA's perspective. And for me,
mm.
that design is genius. So,
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
excellent,
Yes.
excellent.
Yes, definitely. And I think that the conversations that take on a uh, history class, I given a certain situation, bring them up to us to a certain uh, stage, and then they can then come back to this from time to time. I now I'm interested in attending a history class, which is normally in in most cases like, sa panahon ng blank, nung tanong blank, si blank ay nagganyan ng blank. It's like, how do I? You don't appreciate it, but this one you get to appreciate history, and
Yeah.
it's really what has happened, all from different perspectives, and I think you were able to synthesize it quite well in the game.
Yeah,
I'll
and,
tell you a
and
little
just
I'll
secret
add
too.
lang.
Oh, so
Go ahead.
Sai, go ahead. You haven't said anything.
Yes, sir. So I really appreciated the cards, no? So no matter what you shuffle the cards, the outcomes, like you're not messing up with the timeline. So that happened. That really happens. Tapos the balance. I really like the turn order and even the setup, the starting setup. Parang, yeah, this is like the shape of the political map of the Philippines that time. So yeah, I really like it. So the balancing of the three factions and how it plays. So it's like when I play it kasi I played the government side. So yeah, so parang abolish all the uprising insurgencies between the cities and in the countrysides. Pero eventually, slowly they're crawling towards to Manila, marching in. So parang this is really what happened. So parang yeah, ang galing nung construction nung storytelling nung game.
Yeah, definitely. It is. It creates its own story. It narrates its own story. So it's not really. It's giving you the narrative through the mechanics, which is always a good signal of a good design. You mentioned a while ago there's an expansion. You're thinking of an expansion for this.
Uh,
Setting the years, maybe.
well, I don't know. You know, the thing is, if people gave me like the go ahead, or like somebody like Jason or Gene, you know what, we gotta like keep it going. You know, just like the James Bond movies or something
Mm,
like that.
mhm,
I would, and I have some ideas. Like like for
mm,
instance, the Philippines after '86, or even before '72.
mm,
Like they're doing. I don't know if you guys have the British way yet, and then there's the following volume after that called the Guerrilla Generation. I thought
mhm,
if they want another four game volume of that kind of two player coin, simple coin that is.
mm,
Um, the Hukbala Hops during the 50s with Ramon Magsaysay. Of course, we already mentioned Sukarno in Indonesia, Mao in China, but that's already, I think, taking place in the China War. But I'm going like, yeah, you could do, because the guerrilla generations in Latin America, whereas the Philippines was also, and the rest of Southeast Asia was a hotbed of, that kind of insurgent activity. And I have to even say that Twilight Struggle, it's its own region, it's sub-region of Asia. What I was going to add too, and this is I just realized I never like talked about this when I was designing the game, and only Filipinos will appreciate this. Was that when I was writing the cards, once I got the research and I translated that to the cards and as well as the faction sheets, I had background music. So when the background music for the government, you guys will appreciate this. It was this. My bagong silang, may bago ng buhay, bagong bansa, bagong silaw, ang bagong lipunan. That's for the government.
mm,
For the reformers or the opposition, as I called it earlier, it was this. Pilipinas kong minumutya, purap ng gawa at balita. Okay, and then it's like, oh shoot, what do I do for the NPA now? So unfortunately, this was the NPA's background music. Salush Nerushimi.
okay.
So it already took me like in that mindset. So
Mhm,
again, you guys are asking for balance and the design. I have to go with the cultural appreciation of the topic.
mhm. Yeah, speaking of which, I mean, so maybe for the older generations, we're very familiar with it. One of the things that we experienced, Bob and I, was the younger generations. They a little bit more detached. I mean, they're at least a decade or 2 decades away from the event, and they're looking at it now from a very different vantage point. Is there? It, were you able to get feedback from people getting triggered, or at least getting, reacting a little bit? Oh, why is this the topic of the game? Or generally, the ones who are approaching the game are the ones who are interested anyway.
It's
And
funny you mentioned that because I have some gamer friends who have Filipino wives. And when they learned about the Filipino game I was making, of course, they chimed in their opinions about, like, for instance, one of them like didn't like the title, The Iron Butterfly, for a different reason than I had.
Mm.
He thought it was really insult, and it was what was coined then, and then became sort of like an insult towards the first lady, Imelda Marcos. And she told me, I don't like that, through her husband, that is. She doesn't like that title. She wants you to change it if you can. So in my own like deliberate fashion, I'm like, well, it's only one person. So this is what I said. I said, okay, if I change the title, how many copies is she buying? So there. So that's a kind of like, I guess. Oh, you guys okay? You guys kind of blacked out on me for a while.
No, we're good. We're good.
So it was really minor. Nothing like you said about the a little like anecdote like that. Mostly,
Okay.
Nothing
Okay.
like personal.
That's good.
Nothing full of animosity or anything like that. In the end, it's like you guys are the witnesses. I tried to make something that is really neutral because for myself, I grew up like I left the Philippines when I was 19. I can be considered a Marcos baby at that time because again, I grew up, listening only to that part of the facts or the truth. And then coming here, of course, my whole eyes opened, especially during my college days. And so again, I had that dichotomy where it's like, okay, at one point I'm this, another point it's this. So the game was my way of like okay, clearing that up a little bit. It's like I can tell a story and be fair to all parts.
Yeah, and we, Sir Freddy and I have some experience. I showed it to you a while ago. The political game that I designed, satire though, but even down to the colors, we had to like really find the neutral value, just to make sure everybody is okay. And so far, if you've done the homework, you don't get a lot of reactions because you've been fair with surfacing as much information about each side, which is I think really what people are appreciating with your game. Cool. So super thank you for making the time, and I know it's quite early. This is your first time doing an actual game design. You've been a gamer for quite since the beginning. Probably made, as you mentioned in our conversation before the show, you've been playing all sorts of games. And so do you now with the era of board gaming and tabletop gaming with very good visibility, especially in the States, there's a lot of conventions, a lot of the modern games are more oriented into that. Here's the Euro games, here's the board games. What Bob and I have always been trying to push here as well is to get people to try out political war games, conflict games, these sort of historical theme games. And anything you can advise to us to like just encourage more people to try this out, because I think the challenge has always been, it looks daunting because there's all of these themes and history, but is there anything, how do you encourage younger generations to try out history games?
That also, of course, depends on the audience. I think it's like I have a stepson. He's never going to play a war game, but I'll play the games he likes, which is sci-fi, fantasy, a little bit of the deck building, which I actually love now. I love playing deck building games, but and resource management and of course the IP stuff, like your Star Wars, Star Trek type games that you want to capture that feel. So I think it depends like what you want to like actually attract. Like if you want people to be attracted because you have Filipino history, by all means, make a game about Filipino history. I think we now with people power out there, I'm sure it makes people aware that hey, the Philippines was part of history and continues to be so. I mean, ask anybody, anybody in the Philippines, like man on the street kind of thing. Name four invaders of the Philippines. They'll probably mention one, maybe two, maybe three by off chance. But I don't
Mhm.
think you'll get the fourth.
Mhm.
Because again, I think the Philippines gaming culture isn't geared to that. Like I said, like earlier before, I told you all I played was Sungka and
Mhm.
Games of the Generals. But I played every other, like, Monopoly, so there was already the saturation of American. Now I'm sure European markets into the Philippines. Because, since you guys contacted me, I've been doing my research on the Filipino gaming community, and it's a great crowd. It's like, it's, yeah, mostly just like here, like I said, there's some people who won't play certain games, like, well, for instance, with my church group, we play games that are like Journeys of Paul or Commissioned, or we play games on that theme. So you
Mhm.
have to know your audience, I guess. If you know their interest in Filipino history, go for it. I mean, I
Mhm.
always thought there would be a game there that, before the revolution of 1892 with Andres Bonifacio and all that, there was like this period where you had revolts against the Spaniards, like Diego Silan. And I
Mhm.
thought, like, you could make a game where, like, you can try to get all those revolts to the point where, like, it weakens Spain enough though that 1892 can happen.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's just one part of Filipino history. There's also the pre-colonial part.
Yep.
Philippines was part of the Majapahit Empire. People forget about that. That's why you had Rajas like Solomon and Datus like Lapu-Lapu. Those are Islamic Majapahit terms.
Mhm.
But nobody has made a game about that either. All we hear is of that Lapu-Lapu was the first one who defeated like Magellan, right? And I'm going like, well, that was more like, well, because Magellan was involved himself in the turf war.
Mhm.
There were no Philippines yet. How could you have a Filipino nationalistic hero? Yet there are heroes in Ireland, in Germany, like Vercingetorix, who fought the Romans and yet is a German national hero. So it's not just the Philippines. So
Mhm.
it's, I think it's very human, very cultural. People have inherent pride in their cultural heritage. And that's something I think that some games, I mean, you guys talk about like the people power and the generation not knowing what happened in those years. I meet people who go like, "Why do you guys play World War II?" Oh, because my dad fought there. Why do you play the American Civil War? Oh, because I have an ancestor who was in Gettysburg. So
Mhm.
connect that way
Mhm.
to games in a way.
Mhm.
They see it as part of their, like, hey, uh, my uncle was there, or like, Savage Streets. I don't know if you guys heard of that game from Legion, just came out. It's about the American reoccupation of Manila, of which
Mhm.
an earlier ASL game was about, Sword and Fire. I mean, I said to people, it's like they asked, "Are you going to get that?" Yeah, I will. You know what? Why? Because my dad was in Manila. He was 5 years old when the Japan and almost got killed. He and his family during that time. So there's always that connection, and I think that's what has to happen in terms of like making something more popular. It has to
Mhm.
have the connection. Even like, if it's about the Dagohoy rebellion, right? You can say like somebody like, oh yeah, I had a relative who fought in that rebellion.
Mhm.
You never know. People can trace their ancestry now, so it opens the door to that.
I see. Yeah, I think relating. So instead of trying to get everyone into the here's we should be talking about history. Focus on the people who are somewhat going to be interested because they do have a connection, and then from there it will branch out. So, yeah, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Bob, you wanted to add?
Yeah, just to add to that, no, I think if you are a Euro gamer or a casual gamer, try this game out. Um, most modern game designs now are hybrid designs. So a lot of people think of war games or conflict simulations as hex and counter. and the older Euros used to be multiplayer solitaire, but now designs are more hybrid. So people powers actually more of like a hybrid design. It's more of like a hybrid design, and the fact that it's about our Philippine history is a bonus. It's a bonus, but the mechanics and the game design itself is solid. Even if it wasn't about Philippine history, I'd still recommend this game. It has a solid design, and siguro lang one thing that you can do to help ease non-war gamers into playing this game is you really kind of have to handhold them a bit, especially on the first first few turns, because a lot of people who don't play heavy interaction or conflict games might be surprised by the amount of aggro and interaction in the game. Even this game is mechanically not that difficult,
Mhm.
but the interactions and the swinginess, which is by design, can be quite sudden and stressful for someone who is not used to playing direct conflict or highly interactive games. So that's my ano lang.
Okay.
That's
So,
my take on.
all
Yeah,
right.
I'd like to say something about what to add to what Ken said. Like people will have stories that connect them to history, and I think that's really where this game excels at, because it is able to tell story without being overly biased or favoring a specific faction. Of course, there's you cannot tell a story without offending anyone. If you want to move uh, the bar, or you want to move somebody's consciousness, and there will be people who will get offended just by the mere title of this game. But I think where this game really excels, it is able to tell that story with uh, without being too what do you call this, too one-sided. And that's where this game excels at. And for that, thank you, Kenneth, for designing this game. And I enjoyed my playthroughs. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome,
Awesome.
Freddie.
And we the natural nature has already signaled to us that it's really morning now in your area.
Yes, you noticed. I told you I needed this earlier.
We were already in conversation an hour and a half ago. All right, so we're gonna have Ken go. Thank you very much for designing this game. We're looking forward to more of your designs wherever you want to take your design skills, because it's pretty exciting. If you're going to pick up some more historical games, I think we would be very much watching. And when you're in Manila, just mention and we'll take care of you. And so everyone who has joined us today, thank you for chiming in. As I mentioned earlier, go get a copy of this game already, especially because there is a Valentine's discount. Maximize that one. Do what I did, because then you get to enjoy it more, right? So everybody loves a discount. So until next time, thank you everyone for joining. See you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Good morning
Good
to you,
morning.
Ken, and to
Good
our viewers as
morning.
well. It's now
Good morning to you guys.
12:04 a.m.
It's now morning morning also in Manila.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
Okay.
Hello? Ay,